Well, I hope you're having a great day. I hope you're feeling good and things are going well for you. Well, welcome back. For the last 5 weeks, we've been talking about taking on these next several decades of our life with a new energy, with a new clarity. But when you realize that things haven't been going the way you ideally want them to go and you'd like to make a change, you kind of see things for what they really are. Well, what are the consequences of that thing called clarity? Because as we said before, once you see it, you can't unsee it. So today we're going to jump right in to the consequences of clarity. So I'm obviously not home. I'm in New Orleans for a couple of days all by myself. So what better people to talk to than you guys? Otherwise I'll be walking around the house talking to myself, and the two border collies are here with me too. But this is an interesting topic. So once you gain clarity, once you realize the reality of whatever your situation is, and you make the decision to make some changes, how do you get from here to there? So interesting timing. I had a call just the other day from a gal I knew for about 10 years. She lived in my community. She was a neighbor. We traveled loosely in the same kind of friendship acquaintance circles. She moved away 10 years ago and moved fairly far away, close to 3 hours away. And interestingly enough, she had a very, very good friend when I knew her who lived in our community also. And lo and behold, a couple of years ago, I'll call her a best friend. Her best friend moved to the same community that my old neighbor moved to. So when I heard that, they were at this point, they were all retired. And when I heard that, I thought that's really cool. It's a nice community, lake community, a lot of older people. I thought, how wonderful. She's going to have her best friend, closest friend, and someone she at this point has been friends with for 20 years nearby. And that was about it. You know, we talk from time to time, not very often, maybe just a couple times a year. I saw her, not too long ago. There was a big event and she was at that event, so we got to chat. But she called me and she was going through something very difficult. This friend, this best friend, who now has been her friend for 20 years, about 8 months ago, quit returning her phone calls. She said it started slowly. It started with not returning text messages for a couple of days or just sending back an emoji. We talked about that Saturday. And then my neighbor was saying, hey, could you get together for lunch next Thursday? And the gal would say, oh no, sorry, busy with my grandchild. Okay, well, what about the week after? No, well, that probably won't work out. And just kept putting her off and putting her off. And yes, and I asked my old friend, did your friend go through some change? Has something changed with her? And she said, yes, she has a new grandbaby. I guess that's why they made the move to where they all ended up. But interesting, her friend, she said she hasn't seen in 8 months. They have connected a couple of times accidentally. I think they were in a shop and they crisscrossed and chatted, and her friend said, oh yeah, give me a call. Well, we know how that goes. But my old neighbor was really going through a tough time trying to figure out what had she done wrong, what went wrong. Nothing had happened that she could put her finger on, but obviously something happened. Something has changed. But she was to the point where she said, no more. I don't have the energy. She has other family issues on her mind, and her dear friend knows that. But we've talked about it so many times here on the channel that women in particular seem to run from friends when they find out a friend is ill, when they find out a friend is going through a dramatic time. Divorce is a great example. How many women have lost girlfriends because you're not in a couple anymore? And so now no one wants to be around you anymore. So something transpired between these two women that maybe was building for a very long time. I don't know. As I said, my old neighbor moved away 10 years ago, so I'm not really sure. You know, all I could do is tell her that this is her time to make a change. She's got to face the reality, which she was, face the reality of the situation, that her dear friend has moved on to other priorities, other responsibilities, and whatever it is, she would rather just put her old friend off rather than tell her, hey, we're just not clicking anymore. I just want to spend time with my grandchild. I don't really have time for friends anymore, whatever the case. And I didn't go into the details because at the end of the day, we all deal with these things privately, alone, because no one else can get into our head. No one else knows the history of the friendships and the relationships in our life. But she was being faced with the consequences of the clarity that she had gained. Her dear friend did not want to be friends anymore. At least, no, didn't want to be friends anymore, and was sending every signal so that this gal knew it was time to move on. And so we ended up spending most of the conversation talking about how do you move on? What do you want to do? Make a list. And we're going to talk about that today. So there definitely are some consequences when you finally come to a point of clarity. Maybe it's your choice, maybe it's their choice, but at some point we all have to deal with a friendship, a relationship that has reached its expiration date. Wow. Well, there's something no one really prepares you for, but once you see certain things clearly, you can't unsee them. And I don't mean big dramatic things. I mean subtle ones, the imbalance, the one-sided effort, the conversations that leave you feeling off. And once you see it, you can't go back to who you were before, to how things were before. But those consequences of clarity are, in fact, what make everything look different. The same friendships feel different. The same conversations feel different. Even people we've known for ages feel different. Not because they changed, but because you did. You're noticing things that you used to overlook. You're feeling things you used to explain away. And it can be disorienting, it can be scary, it can be uncomfortable, because part of you wants to go back. We all want to go back to when we thought things were easier, maybe in our imagination. Maybe it was because we were too busy to notice or too busy to let it bother us. And there's a real temptation at this stage of clarity to kind of shrink back, to tell yourself, maybe I'm overthinking this. Maybe I'm being too sensitive. Maybe I should just let it go. Because seeing clearly comes with a cost, right? You can no longer participate in things the same way because it's in the back of your mind. And sometimes that means that our life gets a little quieter, less invitations, our circle of friends gets smaller because we become more selective. And then there's something we don't like to say out loud. There's an element of grief mixed in, not because something dramatic ended, but because something just no longer fits. It doesn't feel good anymore. And you start to realize that some friendships were built on an old version of you, someone who tolerated more, who put up with more. And now you just don't. And that realization can be pretty lonely. But once you can't unsee things, you can start moving differently. You get to pause more. You get to respond instead of react. You stop filling every silence. You stop fixing every awkward moment. You let things be what they actually are. And that's a huge shift. For some of us, it's enormous because we're no longer managing the experience for everyone else, kind of like those holidays, right? And people will feel the shift because we're not just setting boundaries, we're withholding effort. We're changing it up. We're not doing when it's not reciprocated. And that's new for people in our life. Not everyone. It's definitely different. Some will like it, some will lean into it, some will pull away, and some will try to pull you back to that old dynamic. But here's the truth, not being able to unsee things is actually a superpower, right? Because it protects us. It keeps us from falling back into that old dynamic that requires you to be that old self you don't want to be anymore. It keeps you from over-investing in people who are under-investing in you. It's clarity with memory. And that's a great combination because it is fair to remember hurt, to remember unkindness, to remember one-sided friendships and not feeling loved or liked. This is usually the point where your circle starts to change, not in a loud, not in a dramatic way, but really quietly and really naturally. You stop reaching out as much to the people who never reached out to you. You stop overextending. You stop forcing connections that never really worked. And what's left becomes very clear. We figure out who checks in, who shows up, who meets you where you are. And that's your real circle. And it can be a group, a small group, a large group. It can be one or two friends. It can be 3 or 4. It can be anything that works for you. And there's also something important. We don't need to rush in to fill the empty space. A lot of people panic during this time of transition. They think, oh my gosh, I need new friends, so they make the wrong friends. Or I need to replace what I lost, so they jump into something they're really not interested in. But the space isn't empty, it's intentional. It's an opportunity to recalibrate, to reset yourself. It's a place where you get to be comfortable and not overwhelmed, not overgiving, where you can learn that it really feels good to be a new you. Take up painting, pottery, writing, bird watching, crochet, needlework, hiking. We have people in this community that ski. How about cooking or gardening or volunteer work? I have a friend who's picked up woodcrafting. Dabble, do whatever you want. You have a completely empty stage just waiting for you to take the center. You get to become what you want to become. And it can feel a little uncomfortable in the beginning, but growth comes out of discomfort. So because you're no longer reacting out of habits, you're choosing on purpose with clarity. New habits, we're retraining ourselves. So if you're in this place right now, I'm in that place right now, where you're starting to see things clearly and you cannot go back. You are not going to get stuck there again. You are moving forward. It's okay that it's quieter. It's okay that it's unfamiliar. But honestly, it feels good at the root. And there's something very peaceful about living kind of within your lane and seeing what you want to see and trying what you want to try. And yes, sometimes it means leaving people and things behind or just separating, maybe not seeing them as much, maybe changing the dynamic up. I'd love to know if there's something in your life that you've seen that you just can't unsee anymore. Something that's told you that you have to make the changes, even if breaking the habit feels a little uncomfortable, feels unnecessary. It's easier to run back and do it the way we've been doing it. But have you faced something like that? Are you facing something like that? I have a feeling there are a lot of us in the same place. I've been taking a lot of walks here in New Orleans, and kind of deciding when I get home, I want to try some new things. I'm going to sign up for a couple of classes. I'll share those when I actually do them. And I want to not recreate myself. I want to create something new. And honestly, that's the last sentence that I said to my old friend today before we hung up the phone. Let's start something new. Let's be something new. Let's try something we've never tried before, because some of this old baggage holds us back. And when we let it go, when we pare it down a bit, it really opens opportunities for us to be free, to try. Well, I hope that resonated with you, and I hope you'll come back next week. And next week we're going to talk about an interesting topic. What does being alone mean to you? What does being alone mean to me? Because a lot of these life changes that we're going through, this new us that we're finding, a lot of it happens up here in our head. So whether you're married, whether you're a widow, whether you've been single your whole life, whether you're happily married, unhappily married, whatever your situation is, a lot of these changes, a lot of this self-reflection, well, almost all of this self-reflection happens up here alone. I look forward to seeing you next week. In the meantime, I hope you feel great, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.